Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. I'm Brian Winnekins from World Dairy Expo. Thank you to our sponsors, including Osteoplastics, so Wisconsin Farmers Union. Also, Andy Grebner, our Credenz Seeds representative in Northwest Wisconsin, UtterTech, and Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. Joining us right now, the president and CEO of the Dairy Export Council, and also former Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack joining us today. And Mr. Secretary, thank you again for joining us. You feel like there's some optimism for exports. It's been a struggle, not just for dairy, but really agriculture in general.
You know, at the end of 2016, we made a commitment to increase value, increase volume, and increase the percentage of dairy that went into the export market. And I'm pleased to say that over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've been able to meet that challenge. We've had increase in value, increase in volume, and increase in percentage what's gone into the export market. And I think we're beginning to see the signs, along with increased domestic consumption, of better milk prices. Hopefully that continues to rise to a point where some of the pressure that people have been feeling significantly here in this state and elsewhere is reduced, and people can feel more comfortable about the future. I'm optimistic. I think there are a lot of opportunities on the export side. The new agreement with Japan, the hope and belief that the USMCA will get ratified, a brief opportunity in China to sell a little bit more permeate and whey protein, Indonesia now interested in buying from U.S. dairy, the opportunity of seeing retail and food service opportunities in Mexico with Costco and some of the grocery store chains selling more U.S. cheese, the ability in South Korea and the Middle East and North Africa to sell more cheese, chance for us to send a very strong message about exports with the establishment of a Center for Dairy Excellence in Singapore. All of that is, I think, positive news for the U.S. dairy industry, and we're beginning to expand opportunities in Chile and Peru as well.
You mentioned Japan. I had a chance to talk a little bit with Secretary Perdue earlier this week at World Dairy Expo, because at least with that initial agreement with Japan, we didn't see any dairy, and there was some concern in the dairy industry that dairy was being left out of that agreement. But it does appear that there's actually some good things in there, because the Secretary disagreed with me.
Yeah, there's about 80% of what we would have had in TPP for dairy is in this agreement. There's still room for additional opportunities when the second round of negotiations between Japan and the U.S. occurs. But in the meantime, what it does is it allows us to eliminate the tariff differential that we've currently been experiencing on the powder side, on the ingredient side, where we saw a little bit of loss of market share because New Zealand, EU had an advantage. That advantage is going to go away. We'll be able to compete on a level playing field. Best opportunity as well in cheese, a chance for us to really take advantage of a growing cheese market. This is a market in Japan, our number 4 or 5 dairy market for the U.S. exports, where cheese and other dairy ingredients are growing at a rate of 4% a year, and it's expected to continue to do that for the next 10 years. So with this agreement, we believe we maybe have the opportunity to double the amount of cheese we sell over time and triple the value of that cheese. So a very, very important agreement for U.S. dairy.
We are talking with former U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. He's now the president and CEO of the Dairy Export Council. Secretary Vilsack, earlier, actually it was last year at the Minnesota Milk Conference, we had a chance to talk about some optimism. And one area that we talked a little bit briefly about was the Middle East, which frankly, I was like, the Middle East? But how is that coming along?
Well, we continue to do some significant work in the Middle East and North Africa. You know, this is an area that's got some really high-end consumers. The UAE, where we basically do some business, has an average family income of $135,000 U.S. So they have folks with money, and they have folks who are interested in cheese and dairy products, folks who like yogurt, folks who like butter. So it's an opportunity for us in that market. We're going to do a new initiative with the trade assistance resources that we've got. We're going to have what is called pop-up stores, the ability to sort of have a temporary store in the middle of a marketplace or in the middle of a mall where a lot of folks are walking by. We're going to give them opportunities to sample U.S. cheese and hopefully be able to sell U.S. specialty cheeses. That's the high-value opportunity that the Middle East and North Africa represents.
You mentioned those specialty cheeses. I know here in Wisconsin, that's a big industry. Is that really a opportunity, a huge opportunity for dairy farmers and cheesemakers from Wisconsin?
I think it is. I mean, I mentioned Japan. We have an interesting promotion that's going to take place in November, December with an outfit called Chesco in Japan. This is a company that owns 10 cheese stores themselves, but they also distribute to high-end market grocery stores and department stores. They've identified, I think, 8 cheeses, U.S. cheeses, specialty cheeses, that they're going to showcase in November, December as sort of a unique gift package. And they believe that this is going to spawn interest in Japanese consumers in having more access to U.S. specialty cheeses. We've also established a sort of a cheese mart using the web, an opportunity for people to basically buy small portions of small-sized orders of cheese, but to consolidate those small orders so that it makes economic sense to get them shipped overseas. So we're continuing to look for ways to market specialty cheeses and to encourage the rest of the world to learn what folks are learning at World Cheese Championships and trials. We had 89 medals last year, gold, silver medals for the quality of cheese that we're producing. So the world's understanding that we can produce the best cheese in the world.
We are talking with former U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. He's the president and CEO of the Dairy Export Council. Secretary Vilsack, over the last few years, we've had a lot of the trade war issues and things like that. And in some parts of agriculture, there have been, well, geez, we shouldn't put all of our eggs in that Chinese basket. Sounds to me like with the U.S. Dairy Export Council and with U.S. Dairy, you're trying to avoid that. We have China, we have Japan, we have the Middle East, Canada, Mexico, Europe, and all. You really are trying to really diversify in our exports.
We are diversifying. Obviously, Mexico is our number one market, and a big share of what we sell, roughly 30% of our exports, go to one country. So you need to be careful about that. But we've maintained a strong relationship with the Mexican dairy industry, and we've basically said, look, we're jointly working together to increase consumption in Mexico of dairy products, so it benefits your dairy farmers, it benefits the U.S. dairy farmers. That partnership, that relationship has worked well. I think the USMCA will preserve that relationship. But there is an opportunity for us to maybe sell a little bit more in Canada with the agreement. It's estimated about roughly $300 million of additional opportunity once that agreement's fully implemented. So even in our own backyard, there's expanded opportunity. And then I think we recognize that the population increases in places like Asia, potentially over a long haul, places like Africa, create opportunity for us because there are a lot of consumers over there. At some point in time in the not too distant future, 97% of the world consumers will live outside the U.S. So we obviously want to be in places where we can do business with that 97%. That means expanding in South America, in Chile and Peru. It means doing business in North Africa and the Middle East when you might think that that's a strange place for us to be. It's looking for opportunities in the African continent. It's looking for ways in which we can say very solidly that we're in the Southeast Asian market to stay. It's continuing to have a presence in South Korea, Japan, as well as China.
That is former U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. He is also president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Exports Council. From World Dairy Expo, I'm Brian Winnikins.